completely changed my life. And now I'm a regional vice president of sales and literally 10x to my income because I was learning to focus on other people instead of what do I want to say, but how would they best understand it.
Imagine yourself in a situation that you find yourself in all the time. So, doctors, you're with a patient, salesman, you're in front of a prospect, you're marketing, you have your business, and the person in front of you has a question on their face. And the first thing in your mind is, man, I wish I had a superpower to read this person's mind. I wish I could read and just figure out exactly what they're saying so I could say the next best thing or do the next best thing. Well, you guys, we can't teach you how to read people's minds. However, we can teach you how to read people's faces. And I have the world's expert on this, Brian Galke. We're super happy to have you on with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So this guy, you guys, he's so awesome. So he rubs shoulders and he reads the faces of some of the world's most prominent and influential people in the world. We were at Steve Sims' event. He is the real life Wizard of Oz. Joe Polish was there. The current Miss Olympia was there. Don Fasat was there. So many incredible people. Brian Bogart was there, just to name a few. And Brian was teaching us these skills, the subtle skills on how to read faces. And I love you, Brian. I love that you consider yourself an introverted extrovert.
Right.
And your whole life, you found yourself, because of that, putting yourselves in positions where people had to come to you for advice instead of you coming to them.
Absolutely.
And I would love for you to kind of share, how did you come to getting to this skill set of being able to do facial feature analysis? How were you able to come across this? And then how have you become the expert that you are today?
Sure. So like you said, I grew up as a kid. I'm an introverted extrovert. I love to be around people, but I was terrified of being around people at the exact same time. So I would go to events, but I'd sit in the corner. And that's because I was living in the prison of my own mind. And so I was always, as a kid, what do you do when you need something? You pick up books, right? And like a good introvert, and try and figure out what are other ways to understand people better. So I picked up books on body language, NLP, how to win friends and influence people, you name it. But the one skill that changed my life is a random thing. In 2011, a friend was coming in town. She said, hey, let's go to dinner. I said, okay, cool. I sat down at dinner and she texted, she's like, hey, I'm not going to make it. I'm like, oh, here we go. And she's like, no, you need to come over to this trade show and meet this guy. I'm like, no, I already have my glass of wine. I'm sitting down. We made plans. I was being stubborn, right? Like, no, you need to come meet this guy. And so I hopped in an Uber. Actually, that was before Uber. I hopped in a taxi and went over to the trade show she was at. And I was introduced to a guy who read my face, and I was instantly stuck. I'm like, wait, what? Because I'd never heard of it ever in my life. But he sat and there was a table of 8 people and he read everybody's face. And I was listening because I've read all these books. Like, he's going to use generic statements like, oh, you must have had a tough time in life. Well, who hasn't, right? Or, oh, you lost a loved one with the name M. Okay, well, you could say Mom, Mary, whatever. So I was listening for these Barnum statements that could apply to everybody. But he wasn't. He picked specific things off of their faces and I was instantly hooked. So I was like, okay, wait. How do I find out more about this stuff? And he is in Fort Worth. I live in Dallas, Texas. And twice a month, he would get together for like 2 hours and teach some of it. So I'd hop in the car, I'd drive to Fort Worth for 2 hours at a time. And then he created a certification. So in 2012, I got certified. And selfishly enough, I used it for personal and professional gain. So to your point, I always picked careers that people had to come to me. So I worked retail. I was a bouncer. I was a bartender, right? I was working at the help desk at that time. I found this skill, all things that people had to come to me. And after I learned the skill, it completely changed my world because I combined it with the other skills, but it's a proactive skill. And so all of a sudden I could do my research on people ahead of time. So I used to be part of a demo group once I started to hone this skill more and more. And that's the important thing, is it's a learned skill. Wasn't born with it, didn't create it. I'm going to show you on the PowerPoint where it comes from here in a minute. But as I used it more and more, I found how effective it was. And going back to being a bartender, the way you learn to make drinks is like vodka and Kahlua is a Black Russian. Vodka, Kahlua cream is a White Russian. Vodka, Kahlua cream and Coke is a Colorado Bulldog. And the reason I bring that up is that's exactly how I learned to read faces. Was I would learn one feature and then I would add another feature and then add another feature until you finally get it. And now the way I teach people how to understand other people is based on reading them like a book. So top to bottom, left to right. And the reason why I left to write, I'll explain a little bit later on, but it completely changed my life. And now I'm a regional vice president of sales and literally 10x to my income because I was learning to focus on other people instead of what do I want to say, but how would they best understand it? And what I absolutely love is when we met in Phoenix at Steve's event, you came up to me the next day. And after only hearing me talk for 30 minutes, you said it helped you with one of the people you interact with on a regular basis, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a team member. We were going over day-to-day stuff since I was out of town. I said, hey, give me an idea what's been going on, and she brought some things to light. Mm-hmm. And I said, I've noticed, if I were to really pinpoint some features, that she has her ears are bigger in comparison to her eyes.
Right. And
I know you had mentioned that if someone has, bigger ears, we typically want to say things that would go, around hearing. And right. I said, and usually our interaction is really quick. Hey, thank you. Awesome. Thumbs up. Unless we're really diving into a question. And I said, hey, I hear you on that. I really hear you. Thank you for bringing that, to my attention. And I said a couple of different times, and she wrote this whole thing. Gosh, I feel so heard. Thank you for hearing me on this. Like, I actually put a lot of thought into this. It actually took a while to discover this. Like, thank you for hearing me. And I was blown away to say, oh my gosh, like my interactions with her, I think have been positive, but now I'm talking to her in the way that she interprets the world and how she hears and sees the world. And I've done it with a few different, some of our clients and the doctors we coach, some practice members, our team, even family, which I know we'll get into that here in a little bit. But man, what a valuable skill to be able to see those features and to see it in live action. And literally that was 30 minutes of listening to you and already having tremendous interactions with my team and within our businesses.
And that's what I love about it is, number one, the reason the company's called Subtle Skills is because you don't walk in and tell everybody like, hey, I learned how to read faces. And it's something you can perfect in private, right? And you just test it on people. And like you tried it. Then that's what I absolutely love and why I wanted to point it out is you were an action taker. You learned something. You tried it that same evening and you got a good result and came back up to me the next day. And that's what I absolutely love about it is I know this is what changed my life. Like in such a trajectory that it's unbelievable. And what was ironic about the speakeasy with Steve Sims that we all met at was Brian Bogart talked earlier about the 4 pillars, and pillars 3 and 4 were people need to feel seen and heard and people need to feel connection. And that's exactly what, when you learn to understand somebody based on their facial features, they feel seen and heard. And because you're focusing on them, and I'll get into that in a second, they really know in this day and age, like they're paying attention to me. Because most of the time people are like, they're on their phone, they're distracted. They're like, yep, okay, that's great. But when you're taking the time, and what I'll teach everybody today is just eyebrows. And the reason why eyebrows lead to eye contact, it changes. It just changes everybody. And what's really ironic is I left Phoenix, flew to Indiana for work. I was trying to get, there was a snowstorm. I couldn't get back to Dallas. So I go to the Indianapolis airport. They're going to reroute me to New York and everything, but a way later flight. And I went up and literally went to the gate agent and I just gave her a few minutes of my time, right? Everybody else is dismissive. I'm like, hey, by the way, how many people are going to come up and yell at you today? Like, you control the weather, and I can see why that can be a problem. I said see because she had larger eyes and smaller ears. And all I did was I just made her feel seen and heard. And everybody else treats them, like dismisses people. Well, guess who ended up in first class on the way to New York? Not a bad way to fly. And all I did was I gave her a few seconds of my time. I made her feel seen and heard, and we created a connection. And I benefited from it, which is kind of selfish. But I didn't do it knowing she'd bump me to first class. I did it because I knew she was going to have a crap day because of the weather, and people were going to treat her like crap. And she did something positive for me. And I guarantee everybody else who behind me was talking to her, until somebody was rude to her, also benefited from it. So
I love it. And you guys, he taught something really valuable right there. So many times we have our agenda when it comes to what we want. And it's always about, what about me? What about me? What about me? When you make it about them, if you're giving a presentation, if you're giving a sales pitch, if you're like, man, we're all going to get bumped today. What's the outcome? We always have to put it about them. What is it about them? Now, you could have just gone up and said, hey man, people are probably going to be jerks to you today. And I'm so sorry about that. You could have mentioned something about her hair. You could have just said, hey, thank you. But you took it a step further. So not only did you recognize that that she's probably going to get treated like dirt here in a little bit, but you also were able to recognize her features that then got you a first class ticket. And I know in talking to you, this is an everyday occurrence for you. This is something that happens every single day for you in business and in your personal life. And I love to jump into this so we can teach, so we can teach everyone, what are some subtle skills that we can learn that we can implement literally today?
Absolutely. So I'll show you just a little bit of background history, and only because people always want to know that. I like to answer questions. And then I will start the PowerPoint. So let me find it right here. So this one I like to call How to Boom in the Time of Zoom. And that was because a lot of people can't go and meet face-to-face anymore. Now, even if you can meet face-to-face, you know, a lot of people are having to wear masks. And so masks are very daunting for several reasons. Even when I'm talking to you like this, my sound is muffled. But we're naturally lip readers because that's how we learn to create language. And so that's the problem. I have a 4-year-old who's going to be 5 next month, who I can tell there's been a slight stunt in her growth because she can't read her teacher's lips. And so she's not learning language and advanced language as fast because we are all natural lip readers. But we talked about earlier, what are the benefits? Here's the thing. It's totally an unfair advantage, but it leads to, I've been 9 promotions since I learned this. It helped me close more deals. Personal and professional relationships, like I can instantly create a connection with someone because I'm not focusing on me. And I'll tell you the story later about, well, I'll just tell you right now. Went to a wedding at Jekyll Island, and we're at the reception, everything. The waiter came over and his name tag said he was Hungarian. I'm like, well, wait a minute, I've been to Budapest. Okay. And I always keep on my phone basic phrases of every country I go to. Please, thank you, good morning, good evening, good night, you name it. And he came and filled up my wine glass, and I said, Kosonom. He's like, you speak Hungarian? I said, well, I've been to Budapest, so I just wanted to say thank you. And he's like, but you took the time to speak Hungarian. I'm like, yeah. Guess whose wine glass was never empty the entire rest of the night? Not just mine, but the 9 other people at the table. Why? Because I took just a second to pay attention to him. And that's why I say like the celebrity-like status, because he brought over every other server. So nobody at my table had to wait for anything the rest of the wedding, all because I took 2 seconds to make somebody feel special. So
can I dive into that for half a second?
Absolutely.
What happened in your what's happened in your life to transition to being able to see people that way? Because I know that when you talk to people, you're not looking for, hey, what can I get out of this? You genuinely want to be good to people. And that has given you, you know, that abundance and that giving and that gratitude mindset now helps you in creating wealth, in creating relationships. And we know that relationships are far more powerful than, you know, just throwing money in an investment fund and seeing how it grows. But those relationships really have a large return on it. Right. What had to happen in your life or to get you to recognize the value of being able to say thank you in Hungarian in order, you know, to look for the good in other people and to help other people shine? What had to happen for that? Because combination, because we could implement skills, right? And we can implement features, but that's a whole new level of thinking and being. How did you get there?
So I have been lucky enough. I've been to 27 countries. And when I first went, I was the obnoxious American who thought, oh, everyone should speak English. And if you don't understand me, I'll just speak louder. And then suddenly you'll understand English, right? And I went with a bunch of guys to Poland to go watch some soccer games. And I thought, you know what, if I'm going to be there for a week and a half, I'm going to learn the language. Oh, I take that back. Let me step back. I studied abroad in college. And when you learn to live the culture, you can't just walk around and speak only English. So I lived for 6 weeks. I lived in Florence, Italy. Wow. And the only downside was I had roommates from Germany, Japan, and Greece. And the only common language was English. So I didn't get as much Italian as I needed. But what I realized is when you try, people have more patience with you. So the very first time I was young, I went to France. I only spoke English. Everybody was kind of rude, in my opinion. When I went back the second time, just a simple please, thank you, you name it, I realized people respond differently and it's no different. If somebody tries, we're all willing to help somebody. But if somebody just stands their ground and doesn't want to do anything, we don't make that same effort to reach out our hand, right? So it's kind of like if you go for a handshake, I don't just stand and wait for you to shake my hand. I put my hand out and then you reach your hand out. And it's that simple, but in our everyday interactions. And you brought up a great point, and that is, look, I'm in sales too. And if you start focusing on only commission, you get commission breath. And then even your words, your body language, everything is about money. And people there are some people who are transactional. And I'll explain to you who the transactional people are just by looking at the eyebrow. Yep, exactly. But most people don't want to feel like it's just a transaction. People want to feel like if I'm trading time, money, whatever it is, I want a connection. And that's what I realized. And so everywhere I go, I take a second, like I'll always ask my server's name. That's because I've waited tables and I've been a bartender.
Same
So
here.
having been in all those, I think everybody should work retail and work service industry before they can ever have a career. Because you know what, when you have those things, you learn a lot. Like being a server, I can't control what the kitchen does, but I have to come out and either apologize for it or take credit for the good food, right? And so if my food's ever screwed up, I tell the server up front, look, I know you're not back there cooking it, not your fault. I'll still take care of you. I'll still tip you. I know it's not, I've been in your shoes. And that's the thing is empathy goes a long way. And we're starting to see now EQ outranks IQ, because IQ used to be important and it still is. You have to be kind of smart, but we now have AI, machine learning, everything else. EQ is what sets you apart from everybody else. So emotional intelligence and paying attention to people, that's going to be the game changer for the future.
Wow. And you hit that so eloquently. You know, like when you're talking about the languages, it's about them. It's
Yes.
about it's about you jumping into their world, not the other way around.
100%.
That is critical, such a critical change in the mind and in your heart to be able to have that. You guys, everything we do has to be about the person in front of us. One of my favorite quotes and thoughts of Mr. Rogers was he would say frequently, kind of behind the scenes, he would say, you know, the most important person to the world, to me, is the person I'm with right then and there. He always had such present time consciousness, and he was notorious for going hours and hours talking to someone, especially a child with special needs. He would go hours and doing this because he genuinely cared. And that genuineness got him to where he was with very, very, very little money in order to get there. But he developed a relationship. So I appreciate you kind of taking a little trail off of that, because that is so critical. So when you have that heart, you guys, when you have that mindset and you apply these skills, you are unstoppable. You will get what you want in a moral, ethical, and the right way. So let's keep going here. Thanks for going off that.
Well, no, I'm going to come on that detour with you. Everybody needs to read the book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Yes.
Have you read that one yet?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
So number one, read that book, then go to Auschwitz, then watch Life is Beautiful. And that creates the trifecta of living through that. But for anybody who hasn't read the book, he was in a concentration camp. But what he realized after being there is the what do you call it? Our drive to survive is important. But what he found is the people who actually survived the concentration camps were the people who wanted to see their mother, their brother, their sister, their dog, their grandparents again. So the people who wanted to see somebody else physically and mentally outlasted the people that were all about self-preservation. And that's what was really interesting about that book is when you focus on others, you succeed versus if you just focus on yourself. Yeah. So that was a great, I'm with you on that tangent completely.
Oh, thank you for that, Ryan. Yeah. Appreciate you.
Sure. So real fast, here's the crazy thing about it is we've all had some training in it because it's part of our everyday language. And the reason why is it used to be taught in schools that for authors and artists, because back before there were photos and books, they had to describe their characters based on facial features. So that's why when we say things like, keep your nose to the grindstone, keep a stiff upper lip, keep your take one on the chin. Those are descriptions of people's personality and how they handle things, right? So they keep your nose to a grindstone, smaller noses. People are great with doing remedial tasks that be done over and over and over again. Keeping a stiff upper lip. If I tell you, hey, keep a stiff upper lip, what does that mean for you? Right?
Yeah. I remember when you were sharing this, you gave us visualizations, being able to, to be firm, to be able to, man up, chin up,
exactly.
Don't let your emotions show.
So all those phrases that we say, keep a stiff upper lip, don't share your emotions. So people who have a flatter upper lip don't like talking about themselves until they feel comfortable. And so we actually are taught in this. We're just not formally trained in it. And people always ask, what's it come from? It's called the art of physiognomy. Goes all the way back to the Greeks. You can look more about it, just Google physiognomy. I don't want to waste time here, but it's basically the mind creates movement, movement creates muscle. And people go, oh, no, that's not true. It's all genetics. Well, it's true. Genetics is what we're born with, but epigenetics is what happens to us after we're born. And that's why, like the guy in the yellow shirt here, for people who aren't who are listening versus watching it, is there's a guy with a huge upper body and tiny legs. Well, you can't say, oh, that's genetics. No, he went to the gym and only chose to do upper body. And your face is exactly the same. What happens is as certain muscles move and alter, it changes the shape of your face and creates lines in your face. And so really faces are like maps, right? And so you can't create a map unless you've been through something. So it shows the journey people have gone through, but also how to interact with those people, right? So you're preparing for the terrain when you look at a map. Faces are no different. And what's ironic is on even identical twins, same genetic code, raised by the same parents, but they may have had strife in athletics, or they may have been successful in athletics. They may have had strife in the romantic side, academically, you name it. And all those things leave little marks on our face over time. And people go, bull. And so I say, all right, well, let's start with me. Now, if I'm in person, I'll grab somebody out of the audience, right? But I'll show myself first because it's kind of weird. So these are pictures of me at 18 versus 38. And what you can see over here is I used to have a straighter eyebrow, and then it became an angled eyebrow once I became a trainer, because I had to learn the material and then regurgitate it and teach it to other people. And you're going to go angled eyebrow. It'll make more sense in a minute, I swear. But look, my ears used to stick out more when I was 18 versus 38. They lean back. There's different reasons for that. So you can see my eyes used to angle down a little bit more when I was 18. Now they're kind of even when it actually angles up. All this will make more sense in just a second. But I want to show people how faces change, because people can't see it. But if you go back and look at pictures of you, you could have an identical twin. You'll still have subtle differences in your face.
Yes.
But the big game changer for me that we were talking about before is it's a proactive skill. Body language is a reactive skill. Going to somebody's office is a reactive skill. This was something that when I used to do presentations, I used to be part of a demo team. And I think I mentioned this earlier. Any customer over $1 million, me and two other guys were flown around the US to go do those presentations. Well, I could, in the hotel, is my projector, my PowerPoint, and my demo all set? Great. But people were always the unknown. Once I learned this skill, I could go to social media, find a picture of them, and figure out how do I best say, or how do I best create the content so it's heard by them. So it's not what do I want to say, but how they best understand it. That'll make more sense in a minute.
You know,
so that's, yeah.
And if I may, I love when we were at our event, when you polled 4 or 5 of us, and then, I mean, if you had it, if there wasn't a time constraint, it would have been all day. But I remember one lady in particular, you pulled up and you literally, you read her eyebrows, you read her lip, you read so many of her facial features, and she had 4 or 5 of her best friends in that group. And every time you'd say, okay, so you are the person who you're underappreciated, but you basically break your back in service to others. And everyone's like, that's so her, and everything you said. And then literally at the very end, you had mentioned something about, and even though it may not seem this way, but you appreciate a hug almost more than anything. And she starts crying. Oh, yes. You say, can I give you a hug? She's like, yes. But who would think in 20 or 30 seconds that you could give a stranger a hug because you read that is part of what they love? Well, that is what you're teaching here. And to see that in action was just powerful multiple times throughout that day. That was awesome.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, it's not unusual for somebody to cry like she did. And it's not crying bad. Like I used to, as soon as it happened, I'd step away because I was like, okay, this is bad. And so body language will teach you, take a step back. I don't. I sit in the moment with the person because they just feel seen. And a lot of times people don't. This day and age, we're so busy, distracted with everything that 1 out of 10 times somebody's going to cry. And, it can be a guy, it can be a girl, you never know, but that you can tell when you make a connection with somebody. I guarantee you she'll never forget who I am.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, I think body language is important. I have tons of books in my bookshelf behind me on body language. The challenge with body language is right now we don't have a lot of visibility. I can't see much of you, Jake. I can see your shoulders. I can tell what you're doing with your head, nodding yes or no, but are your arms crossed or your hands in your pockets? Can't see it. And because we can't go to people's offices, it's hard. And even if we do, what's in the way? Laptops and tables, right? Yep. And here's the real power of face reading and understanding people, or I call it facial analysis or face analysis, because as soon as I say face reading, like, ooh, can you read my palms too? I'm like, no, I can't. No. If you ever hear me jumping back and forth, it's face reading, but I say facial analysis for that very reason. I used to call it facial feature recognition, but I had all these AI companies contacting me to do their security cameras. So I'm like, nope, can't go with that one. But anyway, in the picture here, you see on the left, when you're reading faces versus reading body language, you look at the right and you look at the gentleman. Who would you rather talk to, right? I want the guy who's making eye contact with me versus the guy who's checking out if I cross my legs a certain way. So again, you learn body language. It's important. But when you are reading people's faces, you're looking at them and they know you're paying attention to them.
Right.
Next part is I always learn how to win friends and influence people. Great book. Challenges. We don't get to meet people's desks anymore. And a lot of times, even if you can get to somebody's desk, they're not allowed to personalize them like they could back in the day with family photos and whatever their hobbies were. So real quick example, celebrities. Here's some celebrities you see. What do you see? You probably see people are on The Voice. What I see is people who have larger ears and smaller eyes. It makes perfect sense because on the show The Voice, what do? They start backwards. And if they like the author, the artist, then they turn around to see what they look like.
Yes.
And so this is what we talked about at the beginning of the call is when I look, what you look for is based on proportion size. Do they have larger, smaller eyes? And do they have larger or smaller ears? So it's not comparing the two. It's just looking at their face saying, do their eyes look large or small? Do their ears look large or small? And then you change your approach. So for these people, larger ears, smaller eyes, I'd call them or I'd send them a voice text or a video before I'd email them or just give them a regular call or text.
Wow.
So
yeah,
that's what
that right there. How important is that? You know, how many times do we like, gosh, they never responded. They never responded. Or, you know, I'll send a quick, there's one lady the other day, I just sent a quick video. We had sent some text to her and we were getting concerned. We hadn't seen her in the practice. And I just said, you know, give me just a second. And I looked at her eyes. It's like, oh my gosh, big eyes. Right. I sent her a video. I was like, hey, I just want to check in with you. How you doing? This is my personal cell. Within like 30 seconds, she sent me a video back. And I thought, okay, cell phones didn't work, email didn't work, text didn't work.
Right.
Video worked.
Absolutely. And you can play with people like Janine Driver, body language expert, good friend of mine. As a matter of fact, that was her book that go back one or two that I highly recommend. I kind of forgot to say that. The book in yellow right there. Yes. You say more than you think. Janine Driver, fantastic book. I also love what everybody's saying. But with Janine, if I call her and like try calling her or send her a regular text, she won't answer. If I send her a voice text or a video, immediately back. And she'll usually send me an audio one back as well. So here, jumping into it, I'm going to go super fast to this because I know we're running short on time. But number one, just look somebody up on social media. Number two, find a good picture of their face. Here's where it starts to dive in. There's two ways to read a face. One is you can look at what's the prominent features on their face that stand out. So if they were getting a caricaturist done of their face, what would that caricaturist overemphasize, right? Or I have specific ones. I always look at ears, eyebrows, and then upper lip. And I'll explain more of that in a minute. So all you're doing then is you're figuring out how do you change it. So it's not what do I want to say, but how would they best hear it? And if you think you're doing a presentation, they're going to forward on to somebody else, then you add in the other ones as well. So if I'm talking to somebody who has large ears, small eyes, I use auditory phrases. Does this sound like a good idea? Do you hear where I'm coming from? Does this sound like a good idea? But if I know they're going to forward it on to somebody else, then I pepper in visual ones. Picture this. Do you see where I'm coming from? Visualize this. Or kinesthetic. Does it feel like a good decision? Does it feel like we're moving in the right direction? All those can be added to a presentation because if it's sent to somebody who's opposite of the original target, then you're not speaking their language, right? So that's why it's a presentation, it's one-on-one, then I'm just going with the person, I focus on this, but if it's going to be forwarded on, I add the other ones in as well.
Genius.
So when you look at somebody, who am I talking to? What do I see? How should I change and modify my approach? Show you real fast eyebrows, which I call just browsing. If you've never thought eyebrows are important, Google people without eyebrows. This is what you'll get. And it's creepy because these are all celebrities, but look how you can't even recognize them without eyebrows. Right?
That is crazy.
Yeah. When we're born, all right, if we're lucky enough to have sight, then that's how we take in the world first. We don't understand sounds or language yet. So that's why eyebrows are there, is to help protect our eyes. And eyebrows actually tell you how do they take in and process information. So eyebrow height, there's two different heights. There's very high, there's very low. Of course, middle is kind of what we call a no read. So if you see a high eyebrow, it's like a speed bump at the end of the street where it's right by the stop sign. If it's high eyebrow, it's like a speed bump in the middle of the street. So imagine data racing down your head. The higher the eyebrow, it's got to slow down, go over the speed bump, and slowly get to your eye. If the eyebrow is right above the eye, data can race down your forehead and get right to your eye. So when you're looking at somebody, when you see someone like this, where their eyebrows are a little bit higher, they need time to think about it. They don't like rash decisions. If you force them into a quick close, you'll get a sale, but you'll never get a customer because they will immediately have buyer's remorse.
So I apologize.
No, jump right in.
So for those of you guys who are listening, so yeah, when you look at the eyebrow, if you can see a lot of eyelid, if you can see a lot of space between the eyebrow and then the eye itself, that's what he's talking about. So people have that huge space. They need more, and what you're saying is more time to process data, more information to process that data. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly right. So for people who are listening, it's imagine the look of surprise, how you raise your eyebrows up. When people's eyebrows are up like that, those are people that need more time. Versus if somebody's eyebrows are right sitting on top of their eye, it's like data's racing to the finish. So trying to get from the top of their forehead into their eye, those are the people who get to the point fast, right? They understand things, concepts very quick. So the longer you talk with somebody whose eyebrows are over their eyes, they just quit listening. So you literally just immediately get to the point with people like that. And here's the funny thing is when I meet somebody who has low eyebrows, they tend to interrupt other people because they understand and they want to help you get there too. So it's not being rude. It's just wanting to get you to what they already understand. And even when we were in Phoenix, the guy who came up, right, who at the very end, he had a flatter upper lip. So I knew he wouldn't go first. But when he came up, even while we were talking and everybody was giving the answers back, he interrupted everybody. And I'm like, see, he just proved my point. And it wasn't, I don't take it as being rude. That's his natural reaction style.
Right.
Three basic shapes of eyebrows. And so there's straight eyebrows, angled eyebrow, and a rounded eyebrow. So kind of like the game when we're kids, you're just trying to put the right peg in the right hole. So for straight eyebrows, we say get straight to the point. Facts, figures, data, and stop talking. Just say, hey, what other information do you need? So if you were doing this, for example, let's say people are coming into your office, then these are people who are going to know how many treatments, how much is each, how long am I going to be here? So how many treatments, how much time does it take? What am I looking at and investing to help get my body into better shape, right? Real estate, square footage. Are you looking for a 3.3, a 2.2, 4.2? What are you looking for? Here's your interest rate. Here's what your monthly payments are going to be. So they like the facts and figures. Boom. Into angled eyebrow, help them understand it so then they can help other people. So I have an angled eyebrow. I think I mentioned earlier, I got that when I became a corporate trainer. It's because I had to understand it so then I could help make sense to other people. So if somebody's coming in, has an angled eyebrow, you're going to give them a little bit of information, ask, well, what do you think? Because they want to be involved in the process. So if they're coming in, they're working on a treatment plan, then it would be, okay, well, here's the times. What do you think you need? Is there a certain time of day that's better for you or worse? Involve them in the process because that's how they love to be included in things. And so once they understand something, these are the people who will go out and give you a positive review because you included them and they're part of you now and your business or your, industry or your relationship. And so when you see angled eyebrows, not everything with an angle is a bad feature. This is just how people think. Third one, well-rounded eyebrows. I say that because I think about the people around them first. So the girl that was at Speakeasy in Phoenix, she had rounded eyebrows. So you can tell everything in her world is about everybody else first and herself second. And that's what I brought up in front of her. I said, I know you like always thinking about everybody else, your coworkers, your friends, your family, and then you're second. She's like, yes. And that's why she kind of teared up a little bit. There was another feature that was there. But when you meet somebody who has rounded eyebrows, then you ask them about other people, and then you come back to them second. So you'd ask like, okay, well, what's going on? Are you going on vacation with anybody soon? Who are you going to take with you? If you're selling a house, hey, who are you going to be entertaining? Who else is going to live in the house here? Or if it's a car, oh, wait till your friends see you roll up in this new car, right? And that's what it's about is other people. And here's the thing. These are the people who love your Yelp reviews or your Amazon reviews because they love the opinions of others because they always put other people first.
Makes sense.
How are we doing on time?
I think if we want to do just a quick recap again one more time, and then we'll close out here. So let's go over the rounded, angled, and straight from a 30,000 foot view, because you guys, this is critical. I've taken this one to heart every day in my interactions in my businesses, and this has been a huge game changer for me in the last just a few weeks alone.
Yeah. So we have straight to the point. So if you see a straight eyebrow, those are facts, figures, data people. And then just stop talking and let them ask questions because they're already thinking. And so the longer you talk, you just start pissing them off, right? Yeah. What's my angle? Help me understand it. Help me understand my angle so I can then help other people. But I have to understand it first. And then the polar opposite of that is rounded eyebrow. They think about the people around them first and themselves second. And so when you know that about people, it just helps. You literally can look at them. I go Google people all the time. And what I talk about on there is I'll go Google them and I look at their eyebrows alone and I figure out, okay, what do I need to change about? Do I make it short and sweet, get straight to the point? Do I include them in it so that I involve them so I don't make it look like it's already a complete process? We're working on it together. Or if it's rounded, I talk about how everyone else will benefit from what they're getting from it. And that's how we get it.
That is genius. You guys, this is just the tip of the iceberg of Brian Galke and utilizing these skills. First and foremost, as he said, you have to make it about the person. You have to think of people as people. People want to be seen and heard. How many times have we heard that through our lives? How many times in your life did you go into a situation where you didn't feel seen or heard? And look at the times where you did. What did you give? What did you gain? So you guys, wherever you consume media, go to Subtle Skills on Instagram, on Facebook, subtleskills.com. And I would love and a generous gift from Brian. If you guys go to subtleskills.com and you sign up for his newsletter, he will give you a gift of a couple of PDFs that go over the eyes and the eyebrows. And implementing just those features alone will change the way you interact with your family, with the people, with your team, when you're marketing, when you're negotiating in a sales opportunity. If someone is stressed, frustrated, angry, happy, you'll be able to read and make the best of that situation. So any last words, Brian, any last gifts you can bestow upon us?
Absolutely. So go get the cheat sheet. And here's the best worst case scenario. You don't even have to get the eyebrows right, but just start thinking, what shape are they and what do they mean? So you don't have to change your approach or anything. But when you do that, you're staring so close to their eyes that eye contact happens naturally. And that's what creates the connection. So the best worst case scenario is just ask yourself, well, what kind of eyebrows do they have? Focus on it for a second. You're giving people your time and attention. And the win-win of it is, like, if you're an introvert like I was, I got out of the prison of my own mind and into the present moment was number one. But number two, I'm focusing on somebody else and they feel it. And that's what creates the connections that you guys are looking for. And connections is what makes your life, right? Everything is about who you know, what you know, but connections, right? You can always make more money. You can always move somewhere else, but it's the connections in your life that change your life. So,
well, thank you so much, Brian, for teaching us how to be present, for teaching us how we can help people be seen and heard, and for giving us a small glimpse of the superpower that we can develop in not just reading people's minds, but being able to read their faces so that we can understand and see people for who they really are. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you.
Hey, thank you for having me.